welcome back. I'm your host, Michael Stamatinos with the Advancing Healthcare Innovation Show. And if you're new to us, we're super excited to have you here. We happen to be incredibly passionate about healthcare innovation, adoption, leadership, and access. And if this is your first time tuning in, let me just tell you a little bit about what we do here. So we're a healthcare innovation company, and our focus is about bringing real stories of innovation within the health space to life. And our aim is about highlighting real people that are truly innovating within our space and just giving them the platform, share their stories with the world. We've got an incredibly action-packed year planned with a bunch of new content, some amazing interviews that have already happened, amazing interviews that are about to happen, and I can't wait for you to hear them. If you haven't, make sure you go and hit the subscribe button now and go ahead and binge watch a number of those episodes. So without further ado, we've got an extraordinary guest that's joining us, and someone that's really acclaimed for his analytical prowess and strategic planning and his commendable partnership building abilities. And I've seen it firsthand. Paul Vernich, he's a dynamic professional who's made significant contributions to healthcare while serving in various key roles at GE Healthcare. And currently, he serves as the CEO and co-founder of Winnow. And if you haven't heard of Winnow, they're an innovative AI-powered recruitment platform that's really transforming how in-house teams are sourcing, screening, and engaging clinical providers. And it's reshaping the recruitment process landscape, making it even more efficient, more targeted. And I'm just really excited to dive into his story, his experiences, his insights, and even the future of how he envisions healthcare as it relates to recruitment technology. So Paul, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I couldn't have said any of that better than myself.
So let's, when you kind of want to peer into the future, sometimes you have to take a look at the past. Let's dig in a little bit about your history. So I know you've done a few different tours of duty, and prior to jumping into this entrepreneurial game, do you mind maybe just sharing a little bit more in depth of your story and how you sort of came to the crossroads of founding a company?
Yeah, happy to. And just to clarify, not the honorable lines of duty. I was more so taking my dad's advice, which, everyone's probably heard at one point in your life. You're growing up, you're trying to figure out who you want to be when you grow up. And my dad's advice was, well, no one has any idea. So just try as many different things and figure out what you don't want to do. And hopefully that narrows down the field. And so, yeah, I got involved with a lot of different things. I was even a Northwestern Mutual life insurance rep for my first intern in college and outside of it, which was dreadful because I looked like I was 12 and I was selling people on the morbidity of life. So that was a building perseverance and persistence experience. I quickly realized did not want to do that, so ended up shifting over to a boutique bank in Nashville. I was the branch manager for that. Another interesting experience. Robert Plant was actually one of our clients. So Nashville being Nashville, you had those types of clientele, and hopefully I'll come back to why I'm referencing him later in the conversation. But realized didn't want to be in banking. And then came across GE Healthcare, and that really shaped what has become the rest of my career. Immediately got engulfed in the world of healthcare. I mean, being in Nashville, we like to think ourselves as the healthcare capital of the world. And I very quickly just developed a deep domain expertise in the space, worked on strategic programs. And that was great. But when you're really selling a commodity like medical devices, there's only so much you can really build. I mean, we wanted to separate ourselves by having more of a consultative approach, but I just very quickly realized this is also not what I want to do for the rest of my life. And so that started me on a new search, and I knew I wanted to be in healthcare, but that led me to where I am today.
Pretty fantastic. I know we have a mutual friend who sort of saw something in you, and let's talk a little bit about that leadership and also I'll just call it, your board of advisors, folks that you've had to lean on in this journey. And then let's maybe kind of dive headfirst into Winnow. Because, this is technically you're a first-time entrepreneur. What were some of the some of the reservations you had going into it, some of the risks that you were kind of calculating in your mind. Can you maybe share some of those doubts as you're kind of going into this space?
Yeah, all the doubts. I mean, coming out of GE Healthcare, um, I still had no idea what I was doing. I only thing I knew was healthcare, and that I felt like maybe in 10 years I'd like to go run a business one day. And that really came from we had a launching a venture course. Michael Burcham, big mentor of mine here in Nashville, very successful healthcare entrepreneur. He had a course at Vanderbilt that really unearthed this passion I didn't know I had around entrepreneurship. Typically you hear all these stories about entrepreneurs where they're young and they have the lemonade stands and they're going door to door. And I never did any of those things. So I just assumed I'm not an entrepreneur. But I was building this fake business and staying up till 3 a.m. and I was so passionate about it. So I felt like, yeah, I want to definitely do something like that one day, but I didn't feel like I was ready. I had all
What
this.
was what was the fake business?
Oh, it was a business called Oil Ninja. It was a mobile oil changing business. We actually like won this little competition. It was really great. We had a great team, and that just kind of proved it. And I think one of the local oil change companies is now doing that, which is pretty cool. I need to subscribe.
Very, very nice. Very cool.
Simple things.
So let's take a step forward. And now that you've launched Winnow. How did you stumble upon the problem? What was the unearthing process like? What was the crafting the solution like? What were some of the challenges that were unearthed during that process? Maybe you just kind of take us through the evolution of that.
Yeah. So I guess just to round out my journey to this, Ray Guzman, our mutual friend, was looking for someone to launch one of their portfolio companies. So Ray runs Switchpoint Ventures. They specialize in artificial intelligence, more specifically for back office support functions in healthcare. And he was actually the 72nd person I had met with on that journey, figuring out where I wanted to be. And at this lunch, we're talking about where I want to be in 10 years and why I want to, get in with maybe a venture studio or a VC PE firm. And that way I can get the keys to the kingdom to figure out how to create a successful business. And he's just a brilliant guy. And he was just like, Paul, that's not how you figure out how to run a business. You go run a business. And he's like, I got one for you. I'd like for you to consider running one of my new ventures. And I was like, Ray, I literally just met you. What are you talking about? And so he's like, well, let me tell you about it. We think, we know that the healthcare space is really struggling with physician recruiting. I was like, yeah, that was one of the top 3 things that was always coming up in my conversations with executives. We want to launch an AI physician recruiting company. And I was like, I'm not your guy. I was like, I see why you're trying to pawn this off of me. I know how daunting this space is. And he convinced me to have several different whiteboard sessions. And they had an original concept, which was AI, typically is very disruptive. We know healthcare is very antiquated, but with the physician recruiting space, what we quickly realized was it was just this massive numbers game that was being played. Everyone was dialing for dollars, email blasting physicians, whatever it took to get someone's attention, because everyone is so desperate for these positions. A lot of times the average hiring process takes about 8 months. And so that's very costly to the healthcare organization. You're further burnout, locum tenens, the costs that are coming in. And so we thought, well, artificial intelligence, typically can play numbers games pretty effectively, but should we? And their concept initially was, we think this is really a relationship game. And so where we can get physicians who trust other physicians, that should really help us play a completely different game than everyone else is and very, very much disrupt this space. And so that was the initial idea. And me being me, I discounted all of that to zero and just went out to the market and had another 100+ different conversations to really figure out how to go build this. And just to round up the question, your question, the best way we knew how to was to find a co-development partner who could actually partner with us, pull me into the trenches. I had no physician recruiting experience. So we co-developed this thing with Ardent. And that was a fantastic way to get into the trenches with these people, understand going out to Albuquerque, Amarillo, and Tulsa, Oklahoma, and spending time looking at these antiquated tools, their processes, how much administrative burden they had. And we just immediately knew we can solve something here that helps and drives huge, meaningful change.
You know, oftentimes you hear about how folks are innovative within healthcare, and yet there aren't that many that are willing to provide access and even co-develop. Was it such a painful problem for Ardent and they had exhausted all other avenues of attempts? What was it that really got them to want to really co-develop something? Because that's not just something that is taken lightly. Do you have any line of sight into that? You know, any ideas on why that is?
A few ideas. I mean, from my perspective, a lot of health systems understand they need to innovate. Far fewer understand they shouldn't be. It is very difficult for a very large system to innovate in the way they need to. There is no room for risk in the way that these systems are set up. Where in our world, 1 in 10 of our companies are even likely to be around in a few years. They can't take such risks like that in the world that they've built. And so I think a lot of systems, and Marty Vernich, the CEO of Ardent, he's just a visionary, he's a thought leader, he's very innovative. And the way he's going about driving change throughout Ardent is highly commendable. He's understood that he needs to find partners like Ray Guzman, where we can drive change together and have us iterate to their greatest needs. And I'll tell you, Ardent had some significant physician recruiting needs, but no more than any other system I've come across. And so it really, I think, to answer your question, I really think it comes down to the leadership team and that recognition.
Yeah, leadership matters now more than ever. We've talked about this offline. I've stated this publicly on social media, and continue to sort of stand on that. Is like, when innovation only falls on one individual, one department, the end is near. And this is something that is driven from a leadership perspective. With that being said, there's quite a bit of a stigma around AI, and there's some naysayers that are out there. How did you guys combat those naysayers, those that have fears and concerns that this type of a solution could potentially remove their jobs? How do you respond to that?
Yeah, I mean, so many fears, so many bad experiences that a lot of these stakeholders have had with artificial intelligence already, where there have been these over promises and under delivers. It's been a challenge, I'll be honest. You come in touting artificial intelligence and they either immediately discount it or they stack you up against perfection because they have this grand idea of all the benefits that AI can bring them. With physician recruiting, I think the biggest challenge we've had is the fear that AI is going to replace their jobs. And, there's a lot of elements behind that. And what I typically address is the fact that if you really break down physician recruiting, there's this science part, which is, the administrative burden and the parsing through resumes and going profile to profile. Like, there's so much of that I can't imagine most physician recruiters. I mean, I've certainly had many tell me they hate certain aspects of this. Not many are living in, waking up to go and parse another resume, go email blast 100 different providers. And so the science piece is where we're really trying to help them and automating certain elements, helping them be more efficient and improve conversions. We'll never, at least in no time soon, be able to automate or to really drive and take over their job for is the art of their job, the building relationships, the influencing. I mean, I don't know that physicians are going to be any closer to wanting to deal with a robot rather than their own, a friend or an actual recruiter who can guide them and facilitate that throughout that process. And that's really, if I had to boil down what this AI company is all about, it's kind of ironic where artificial intelligence, it brings so many connotations of an inhuman experience, but we're really all about relationships. We exist to curate relationships. Knowing physicians trust physicians, how can we enable these different conversations with their own friends, where these physician recruiters are facilitating a whole new experience where there's these subjective qualifiers. You're not just asking about compensation and competing against 100 different organizations. Now you're talking about experience, and your own friend is helping you guide you through that process. That's everything.
How do you rank a physician's satisfaction and their propensity to want to actually, let's just call it, sell one of their friends on the opportunity? How do you gauge that? How do you know that there's a potential interest there?
So many different ways. I mean, every single organization uses Winnow in a different way, but there's a big disconnect in how people think physicians want to participate and how they do. And so I want to preface all that answer by first talking about the current state of physician referrals, because right now referral programs consist of, you have a requisition, new hire, you blast all your internal providers, and you're like, hey, who do you know? And think through every single person you've ever come in contact with. Tell me who's a good fit for this role. And it's crazy that we're expecting these physicians in their chaotic days to stop and think through that. I mean, the way I always think through that, it's like it's asking someone what their favorite song of all time is. I mean, I have been thinking about that for years, and I don't know what my favorite song is. And yet, this is effectively what we're asking these busy physicians. And so what we're saying is, let's give them a specific song, something that they don't even have to think about. It's almost a visceral reaction. And so I mentioned my friend Robert Plant earlier. The example I always give is, what do you think of the song Stairway to Heaven? Like, that's one of those polarizing songs you don't have to think about. You either love that song or hate it. I actually don't like that song. I love Led Zeppelin. I love Robert Plant. But the point is because I don't have to think about it, because my instant reaction, I can just move on with my day. I don't have to stop. And that's the exact experience we want for these physicians, is if I reference one of their friends from residency program, they don't have to stop. They can immediately qualify. And so to answer your question, they do want to participate. We've just made it too difficult for them. And the best people to actually unlock those referrals are those that know those physicians the best. And those are the ones feeling the most pain in this entire process. It's the practice managers, it's the medical directors, it's the physician leads who are feeling the pain of the opening, having to deal with overextended teams and locums and all these other elements, knowing the exact personas and behaviors of these physicians they're walking the halls with, and having an empowered way, or feeling empowered to go fix it by going to their physicians with a snapshot of predictive candidates they have relationships with, so they can collectively solve it.
So let's walk through a potential, like with Ardent. Give us the use case of their particular problem, and then them intervening with Winnow, and then let's talk about what does their situation look like now? I mean, what type of a difference are we talking about in terms of, speed and all of that, all of those things?
Yeah, well, Ardent was interesting because when I first went out to several of their markets, I was astonished at how they went about physician recruiting. And I want to be careful because every organization I've come across, they have their own unique challenges. Ardent was going through a change where all of their markets they had a lot of autonomy and brand identity. And so for that reason, a lot of their physician recruiters in these markets really didn't speak with each other. They knew of each other and they would have occasional dialogue, but they weren't sharing best practices. They weren't sharing candidates. And so I had a lot of recommendations that led to a lot of restructures, some sourcers being hired. And so right from the get-go, we were like, okay, not only can we add some value from Winnow, but let's really get our arms around this and start measuring a lot of these day-to-day challenges. Let's build a structure here. And so that's been phenomenal. Christy Ricks now leads that team, and she's done a phenomenal job of taking very individual silos and working them collectively to get the most out of all of that. Where we've seen the best change from all of this is this new engagement with these medical leaders. These physician recruiters are at such capacity. The last thing I can do is go to them and say, hey, I need you to do, one more thing. Because Winnow is at the end of the day, it's a paradigm shift. It is not a bolt-on. A lot of physician recruiting efforts right now are focused on active recruiting, where, physicians raise their hands, they get on job boards, and everyone in the marketplace attacks them. And so most physician recruiters are used to that type of back and forth, whereas we're presenting these predictive candidates and they're passive. We're actually using AI to predict when physicians are going to leave their job. And so we're getting ahead of that physician getting on that job board. But it's a very different type of activity. And so where we found a lot of traction with a lot of our customers, not just Ardent, is actually unlocking, as I referenced before, the medical leaders, those that are feeling the most pain. Because I mentioned that propensity to leave piece. Well, they're also now getting insights to their own flight risks. And who can best control that are those medical leaders who know those physicians, who can drive, who can be proactive and hopefully mitigate them from leaving in the first place. And so that's been the great unlock, so that the physician recruiters don't have to have their world disrupted by Winnow. All they're doing is receiving the best inbound leads they've ever experienced, because they're predictably qualified, they're pre-screened, they're subjectively qualified, their interest has been confirmed, I mean, so on and so forth. And so that's the new state of it.
Interesting that you spoke about engaging clinical leaders and ones that are at flight risk without giving away any secret sauce. What are some of those factors that would showcase that there's a bit of unhappiness happening below the surface? Because, there's kind of like a poker face.
Yep.
When a clinical leader approaches some of their team, something happens within the corporate world. You get to a certain level, and then everyone starts lying to you because everything is great.
Right.
And clearly it's not great. What can you showcase to a clinical leader to let them know that these conversations that they're having, because they want to be a good leader and they want to engage their team, but the team doesn't want to tell them the truth sometimes? What are the factors, the underlying factors that showcase that someone truly is not satisfied with the work that they're doing?
So a few things there. That is something we've realized, is that just across almost all the organizations we've encountered, there's this massive divide between physicians and the administration.
Yes.
They don't feel like they're heard, they're connected, and it's almost feels like it's by design at times. It's almost like we're better off if you all are over here and we're over here. And I mean, it's amazing, because you look at physician recruiting departments, most of them aren't even a part of HR. They're also their own little world and animal. So it's an interesting.
They're like a SEAL Team 6. They're going out there and they're just kind of operating on their own.
That's right.
People know that they're there, but they kind of don't.
Right. So I think there's a few different dynamics there. So first of all, to answer the question, like what is this propensity to leave? I mean, here's the God honest truth. I don't know all the factors that lead to our artificial intelligence making a prediction of when someone's going to leave their job, because it's truly operating in an unsupervised environment. We have approximately 1,200 data points pre-claims data. So we're pulling in claims data now too, which is only going to increase our accuracy. But we also have 17 plus years of every single job change that's taken place for these clinicians. Wow. And so we've had our machine learning just look at all of this data across all these different physicians and all that timeline. And it's looked at it on an individual basis, on a regional level, on a subspecialty level. And it's actually been able to pick out all these patterns and trends. And we've run simulations that have shown we have 90% accuracy on actually getting that right. And that's without what you're really probably asking for, is like, how do you know these physicians are unhappy? And we don't even have a lot of that data. And so you can imagine how much better we'll be once we do. and how we can actually, okay, so now we understand who the flight risks are. And it's crazy. I was on a call just with a physician recruiter at HCA a couple of days ago, and she was like, the second candidate on this list, I ran this project a couple of weeks ago. I just followed up. Second candidate on this list just changed jobs, and they had a flight risk of 100%. How on earth did you guys know? Like, it blows their minds. But it's the idea of it is like, I don't understand how we do it. Yale is also doing their own propensity leave, and they have a 96% accuracy. So we actually have some work to do. We do have it on a grand scale, and we hope to match it with the claims. But I'll end it with this. This is the first step. It's understanding something we have no visibility of without it. And so now that we understand who might be a potential flight risk, the next question, the next logical step is, what do we do with that? What do we do next? And to your point, that's where we can start to bridge this gap, start to understand where some of these flight risks, what's important to them, what might actually be driving them to wanting to leave at that organizational level. Can we do more polls or surveys or listen to them more and find ways that they can be a part of this community and brand that you are all building?
Absolutely. I have some more thoughts on that, which we'll talk about after in another conversation.
Yeah, sounds good.
So given where the stage of the company is, it sounds like you guys are moving incredibly fast in a short window period. If we, let's just say, fast forward a year from now, and we're just looking back, what's happening that will make you feel really, really satisfied with the trajectory and the growth of the company?
Yeah, I mean, my vision for Winnow is that instead of physician recruiters having literally a dozen different tools that they have to log in and piecemeal little bits of value from, Winnow will be the tool. We are actively building out an applicant tracking system, and we didn't even want to do that. We've gotten to the point where our customers are demanding us to build certain things on our roadmap. And many of our customers, most tend to hate their ATS, but their point to us was, well, there's no better applicant tracking system than one that already has every clinician in it and all the data that you all have in it. And so we were like, yeah, that makes sense. Okay. So we're building that. And that's what I mentioned that first, because that's the foundation of all of this. And so we have all these predictive candidates that we source in this passive recruiting world where we surface relationships they have with your own internal providers. But we're also going to be we'll pull in inbound candidates as well. So whether you're receiving job board candidates or direct applicants on your job site, we'll be pulling them into the Winnow environment too, so that those active candidates, you can also surface their relationships. And so now you start to have this world where everything you need to know about any clinician, their procedures, their qualifications, the diagnoses they're doing, referral patterns, you name it. You won't even need a resume anymore, hopefully. You'll just have everything in this one space where we're hopefully helping automate a lot of the administrative burden. Most physician recruiters are spending about 60% just in that administrative burden, and free them up to just focus on that art, building more relationships, facilitating these referrals, getting their physicians and medical leaders involved in this whole process in the most seamless way. And we've got a lot of other cool things coming too, with physician compensation insights, even a two-way platform where we're going to be predicting where physician candidates, where they should think about going and practicing medicine. And by the way, here are some friends of yours that work there. So lots of really cool things coming over the next 12 months, but it really just comes down to all of that feedback we continue to receive, where our customers demand us to go iterate.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I mean, you kind of stole the thunder with the last question, or actually there were two questions, but one of which is, hey, give a sneak peek as to how people can follow the work of Winnow. What's sort of some of the best comms channels that they can follow you and the team on as things are starting to kind of roll out?
Yeah, I'll be honest. We are a small startup, rely heavily on the venture studio. And one of the big areas we have just really lagged on is it's just the social media stuff, the blogs. We are actively building out our new Winnow website, which should be launching the second week of July. We do have several blogs and many more coming, but if you go to winnowhealth.ai, you'll be able to find a nice few different blogs that's telling the story and the why and sharing some best practices. But now that we've, our prioritization of the roadmap and getting to where we are, it's allowing us to focus on more things. You're going to see far more of us on LinkedIn and our blog.
Amazing. And then just one last question is, listen, we have a number of folks within our community, many of which are senior executives of health systems, health plans, and investors in this community, as well as other solutions providers. If there's one app or one takeaway that you can give to someone from this conversation, what is that one takeaway? And then what is the one ask that you would ask from our community to kind of support Winnow on this journey?
Really good question. I'll say the one takeaway, I'll say that, all of this physician recruiting space, it's so challenging. I thought building an artificial intelligence company was tough. Change management and getting people on board with a new way of doing things, that's close to impossible sometimes. But for me, the key to finding success with all of this was constantly asking our users, asking our customers where their pain points were. And every time we ran into a wall, not just trying to push and, there's this perseverance that entrepreneurs tend to have where they just want to bulldoze their way forward. And sometimes you fail to recognize that, no, there's actually a wall there that you shouldn't knock down.
Yeah.
And that wall for us was that physician recruiters only have so much capacity for, solving for something else in their day or changing any of it. And so if we weren't really listening and asking ourselves, do we actually have the right end user here? We would have never found these medical leaders who could unlock the true value of Winnow. And so I just say any entrepreneur who's kind of thinking about launching a business, or maybe you're already in that and you're kind of where we've been, struggling with product, trying to find product market fit, who's going to extract this value. The best question I ever asked is, well, who's truly feeling the most pain? And that has led to a far greater outcome for us. And my ask would be, if you know anyone that's dealing with physician recruiting challenges, I'm assuming that's just about everyone. We'd love the opportunity to demo, explore Winnow together and find ways where we can be a meaningful solution.
Awesome. Well, Paul, listen, it's been a real pleasure to have you on. And for those that have just been tuning in, thank you. Thank you for listening. And just one ask for me is, would you mind sharing this on your social media? Would you mind commenting and liking it? As noted, subscribing to it. It helps. It helps when you have a community of doers that want to advance society at large. I don't think there's any better way to do that than through innovating within healthcare and finding the right talent and cultivating it is a big key to success. If we don't have the right providers in the right places doing the right work at the right time, it's not going to work. So applaud the meaningful work that Winnow is doing. Congratulations on the successes that you've had in this journey thus far. And my hunch is that we'll be hearing a lot more from Winnow in the very near future. So all the best to you. Looking forward to having you come back on the show and just kind of giving us an update at some particular point in the future. The door is always open for you.
Look forward to that.
Thanks, Paul.
Michael.
Amazing.